Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and this episode, we've got an awesome guest. It's not every day that I get to connect with guests before our actual sessions, but Jennifer is an awesome entrepreneur who I had the chance to connect with before today. She also lives right down the road here in the Gulf Coast of Florida. She's about an hour south of me. I want to tell you about Jennifer because she is doing incredible work. So Jennifer DeRosa is the visionary founder of Toto Coaching, an innovative online platform offering weekly live coaching sessions designed to help ambitious entrepreneurs and small businesses craft a powerful, trust-building website, not just any website, one that effectively pre-sells their products and services. Jennifer's entrepreneurial journey began all the way back in 2001. It's not every day I meet an entrepreneur who's been in the game longer than I have, but Jennifer has so much experience, with which it comes so many experiences and stories and lessons. So she started her entrepreneurial journey with the launch of Tech Care, a successful WordPress web development agency, which she expertly led for 2 decades before making a triumphant exit in 2021. Driven by a passion for empowering others, Jennifer sold Tech Care to focus on guiding aspiring website builders through the expertise offered by Toto Coaching. Prior to forming her first company, Tech Care, Jennifer has worked all over the place, managing a help desk, a desktop and server support technician. She consulted for industry players such as Mercedes-Benz Credit Corporation, US Surgical, GTE, GE Capital, Unilever, Calvin Klein, so many different types of companies, and she has a real passion for websites and technology. So we are going to learn a lot from Jennifer. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview today with Jennifer DeRosa. All right, Jennifer, here we are. I'm so excited to welcome you to the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Well, I'm so excited to be here with you, and I'm so glad that you're helping so many people, just like all of us, actually. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I obviously know how much passion and energy you have for all the things. I didn't tell listeners about that just yet. I also didn't mention how often you are presenting for SCORE, which is, you already called out that you love uplifting other entrepreneurs, and that's the exact mission of SCORE. So you're involved in a lot of places, Jennifer. I always like to open the stage for guests. Take us beyond the bio. Tell listeners, who is Jennifer?
Well, most of the people who know me say that I have a lot of passion and I have a lot of energy. And that is definitely true. I'm a positive thinker. I want to work together with people, and I realized actually over my journey, we learn about ourselves as we go along in life. And I've really looked at myself the past couple of years as well after I sold Tech Care to say, what am I really looking for in life and what do I enjoy? And I have found that the times that I've been most happiest working in my life have been when I have been helping people understand a concept or fixing something, and then explaining to them as well how I fixed their issue or made their life better in whatever way. And that is so rewarding to me. People being so thankful for the help that I give them. And I realized that right before I sold Tech Care, I started thinking about that. And that is why I ended up selling my company, so that I could teach other people all that I know. No one is teaching people who need this information, all this information. And I love it. And so that is what people I think would say about me. If they had a chance to say, and that's something that I do enjoy. I do agree with.
Yeah, I love that. And I can, obviously, in our limited interactions before our session here today, it's something that I can attest to. You and I were immediately geeking out about all things entrepreneurship, about giving back to people. I feel like that's so much at the core of what it is that you do and why you do it. And that's why when we were talking about what we're going to talk about here on air today, I was like, Jennifer, you give so much back to entrepreneurs that, like, no matter what we talk about, it's going to be amazing. But I do want to dive into that because one of your passions, I know for sure, is websites. You talk so so much about how and why websites are at the cornerstones of the way that businesses, entrepreneurs, thought leaders show up in the world. Talk to us about what it is. Obviously, you had a WordPress web design agency. What is it about websites that ignites your passion?
So, you think about, years ago, before we had the internet or before it was so ubiquitous, right? So people didn't have many websites. And so what was the way you'd get your word out? You'd get it out either through radio or television or print material, which is very expensive. And as the web has, grown up, and we've all grown up with it, now we know that it's very accessible. So that is kind of a given. You're almost born with the right to the internet, right? With a computer or some kind of device that can access it. So things have changed a lot since I have been growing up. But there's still, and because there's so much digital technology now, and it's moving so fast, especially with AI, which I'm actually in a course right now at MIT University, learning no code, AI, and machine learning. But everything is moving so fast, and it's very difficult for people to keep up with what's going on. Even web developers, okay? Even if you're reading all this technical stuff all the time, and you're into learning and reading, you get digests or emails sent to you, or you spend a certain amount of time researching, it is very difficult to keep up because everything is moving so fast. And there's a lot of regular, normal people. Most of us walking around are not reading about the new things that Google's doing, or the new thing that your website should do, or how people are using the internet, or how Google's changing their algorithm, or how ChatGPT now is integrated with Bing. There's so many things. We just are walking around trying to do our job, right? So like if we're an electrician, we just want to go to work and like do a really, really good job in someone's house and have, leave and have someone be thankful that now they have beautiful lights or whatever. We don't want to learn all of that information. And so what I feel that I do really well and what I do love doing is taking my knowledge of what I've been researching and what I'm learning and all of my years of experience, like working with customers and questions that I would get from them, and taking all of that and then delivering it to regular, normal people who are out there in a way that they can understand, and so that they can feel like they're part of what's going on. I think we all want to feel part of what's going on in society, or at least some of it, maybe not other parts of it, but we want to be part of what's happening in the world. And technology is very difficult right now, especially to feel part of it. It feels like there's like a train, a high-speed Amtrak train that's going on. And, it's like those old movies where you see the people running next to it, right? And you're trying to jump on, and you can't jump on, right? And maybe you're like, what, forget it. I'm not going to jump on. I don't like all this running. I'm just going to go do my thing. So I feel like I want to help people understand what's going on that train. You don't have to jump on. You don't have to jump on, but just come over here. Let's have a little cup of coffee or a glass of wine over in this cafe, at this Amtrak cafe, and I'll tell you what you need to know. I'll give you the high level, the specifics that you need.
Jennifer, I so love that analogy of the train because, I am picturing you flying past on a train. Let's just call it the tech train. And all these business owners are on the, like you said, the Amtrak cafe, hanging out outside of the train. And it's basically you saying, you don't need to get on this train. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't let the train distract you. And more importantly, and maybe why I like the train analogy so much, is because if those business owners get on the tech train, it's going to take them to a destination that they shouldn't be at. Not every train is meant for us. And I'm going to call that out. I think it's a natural segue right here because, Jennifer, one thing that when our team found you and your work, the headline that for me was just like, I need to get to know Jennifer, is you wrote on your website, let's be real, if someone was given Picasso's paintbrush, would they automatically be able to create a masterpiece? Of course not. And it's something that you and I have been entrepreneurs for a long time. I'm 15 plus years in. You are even more than that. You're 20 plus years into your entrepreneurial journey. And we've seen tools come come and go. We've seen fads and hype trains come and go. And we understand that those things change. Whereas newer entrepreneurs, they're thinking, oh, everybody says I need to use ClickFunnels. I got to use that. Or Gary Vee tells me every other month I need to be on TikTok or Snapchat, or who knows what the flavor of the month is. But you and I realize that it's actually not about the tools whatsoever. It's about how you use the web. It's about how you present yourself on your website. Talk to us about where that thought process came along and why it's so important that it's one of the first things on your website.
Great. Well, anyone can learn to use software. I mean, how does that help you? How does it help you if you know how to use saws and hammers and things like that, all those tools? My husband's in construction, right? If I learned to use all his tools, I would not be able to build a house like he does. Okay. So there's more, and that's the thing, like there's so many courses out there that will teach you, like getting back to like websites building and specifics, because we all need to have a website for our business, right? We should have a website for our business. It's really an amazing tool that if we use it correctly can pre-sell our products and services and do our marketing for us, and is not that expensive in the general scheme of things, right? But so many courses that you see out there are built around teaching you how to use the software, or they say really scary words like HTML and CSS and PHP and like all those jQuery. Like, who wants to know that? I don't want to know that stuff, right? I just want a website for my business. That's all I want. So let me take this class, and then the class teaches you how to use the software. Well, that's okay. But that's kind of like me learning to use all the tools that my husband uses at work. I'm not going to be able to build a house, or actually, I probably will be able to build a house, but like, I don't think you want to stand on the second floor. Right? So that's the same thing with your website. Like, who's teaching you all the things that you need to do? Like, there's a purpose for your homepage. And there's a purpose, there's things that you should be putting on every page. And how do you write an effective call to action? And how do you use white space? And why should you use white space? What does that mean? And should you put local structured data on your website? Yes, you should. Do you know what local structured data is? If you have a local business and you don't know what it is, you need to make sure you do know what it is, because that is how Google is returning you in search. Near me, right? That's where it's coming from. So there's so much else to learn besides Picasso's paintbrush. Right? If you have that tool, that's fine. But there's so much else you need to know in order to be able to like go into that house and stand on the second floor.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm glad your husband is in construction, because that also makes for the tool analogy is also perfect there. So yeah, it ties in perfectly with this. And I think you just asked some of those big questions that are way more important for entrepreneurs, which is the fundamental questions of what does my website need to have? Let's even start talking about that, because I remember in my early 20s when I built my first WordPress website, I thought a website was a brochure essentially, but obviously that's not the way to think about it. Jennifer, take us deeper into that. What is even the purpose of our website?
Right. Well, the purpose, you want it ideally, right? Ideally is to get a ton of traffic to your website. And then after the traffic, well, let's step back for a second. Let's talk about search, right? Because that's how we're going to talk about organic search, right? So let's step back. The first thing you want to do is not be on position 100, right? You want to be position 1, 2, 3. So moving up in search, how do you do that? Then when you're up in 1, 2, or 3, you want people to click on your listing, right? You want people to click on your listing. So, and if they don't click on your listing, if you're on 1, 2, or 3, you're going to get moved down. And then once people click on your listing, you want people to stay, right? You don't want them to go on and go off. That's called bouncing. You don't want that to happen. You want them to engage with your website. And then once people are engaging with your website, what do you want them to do? There's a lot of different things that you want them to do. Number one, you want them to become a customer. Okay. That's the end result. Whether they get in their keys and they drive in their car down to your local establishment, great. That's one way. Or they give you a call on a phone, or they fill out a form or something. But you want them to reach out to you. Do you want them to become a customer in whatever services or products that you provide? That's the end game. So how do we get that person who doesn't even know you exist, who's over here, right, to actually being a current customer? And then what's even better after that? A cheerleader customer, someone who goes out and is an evangelist for you, right? So your website can do this. It can do this if you build it right, if you have the right message. There's a lot of things. If you have the right messaging, okay? Messaging people forget about. They just kind of build it if they're going to build their own, and they put some stuff on there, and they don't understand that they're not really they're not talking to their pain points of their customer. They don't even know the pain points of their customer. They haven't even thought about the pain points. So that's one of the things we go over in the class is like, you need to know your pain points and you need to know what you do that addresses them, because your customers are going to look on you know this, right? I'm just saying things you know. They're going to look on multiple websites or look around and you have a lot of competition. So what differentiates you? Why should they hire you? Why should they buy your product, right? So that's the messaging piece of it that's really important. But then you also have this other, that's once they get there, right? But then you have this other piece of getting them to your website and where you are in search and what you're in. People will be like, oh, all the time I go out, can you tell me how I'm doing in search? I'm like, for what? For what words? Do you want to go for, podcasts for entrepreneurs? Or are you trying to go for, doggy daycare? You need to know what you're trying to go for. And then in between all of that, right, is building your website around your messaging and around those words and for your target audience. And there's a lot of things it needs to do. It needs to load fast. It needs to be easy to understand. How do you make it easy to understand? There's ways to do that. You break your content up. You make it easy to understand for search engines because you assign heading tags, H2s, one H1 per page. There's all these rules. And if you're not a web developer, you don't know this. And you're not expected to know this, just like I'm not expected to know how to do an angle for crown molding, right? So you're not expected to do this. So this is really, I think a lot of people try to start building their website for their business so that they can pre-sell their products or services, or they can make that sale like we were talking about, Ryan. And they feel like they failed. And it's not you who's failing. Is you just don't know the steps that are important and the things that you need to do. And it is possible in 2023 to do this yourself. It is. I would say, years ago, it was probably a little more difficult. But the tools we have, everything's becoming more easy to use. And so the tools are there for you. They're pretty simple, but it's a lot more than just slapping your images and your text on the page and saying, oh, I'm going to get customers. It's not the way it works. There's a lot of other things that you need to know in between those two locations where you might be at.
Yeah, Jennifer, so much I love about the way that you answered that question. Two things in particular that I really want to call out for listeners right here, right now, is the first of which is that when I asked you about the website, you actually diverted to the user experience and the user journey. From step one, you said, hold on, before we even get to the website, there's an element of discoveries that you need to start popping up in search. So I love how user experience focused you were in that part of the answer. And then the second thing I really want to call out is, and you said it very, very directly, is you said, I'm already telling you guys things that you already know. And the reason why we know these things is because we are all consumers as well. And so when we're consumers making buying decisions, we know what it's like to go to other businesses' websites. But it is this crazy world, Jennifer, where when we sit down with our business owner hat on rather than our consumer hat on, all those things fly right out the window. And we forget about all that because we're up in our own head and we're thinking about our own needs and we're thinking about this giant task of, well, I need to build a website. Talk to us about some of those mistakes, because we're all guilty of website mistakes. That's why this episode is here for you listeners, because we want you to stop making those. Jennifer, you've seen a lot of this stuff. What are some of those common mistakes you see businesses making?
Oh gosh, there's so many. But the first one, and I talk about this in some of my SCORE webinars that you mentioned before, and I just was presenting live this week as well to a group of people. People start with a homepage, and a lot of web developers start with a homepage also. I don't understand that. Okay, so let's think about that really quickly. The homepage, what's its job? It has a job to do. Do you even know that? It has a job to do, and there's a bunch of things it needs to do. It needs to tell people they're in the right place for your products or services or location. It needs to also be beautiful and modern enough so people stick around. And it also needs to direct people to content. Your homepage really is, and I have a little introduction about you, but it's really a table of contents. And if you are going to write a book, you don't write the table of contents first. You write it last, because then you know where everything is. You build your whole website. And if you're starting a new business or you haven't, there are some people that don't have websites yet, and they have businesses, if you can believe it. There are people. So if you if you haven't taken all your material, right, you have like maybe brochures and all kinds of stuff, or maybe you don't have any material, but maybe it's all in your head, whatever. Once you take it and you put it into a format that's on the web, right? So it's different. It's web pages. So you're looking at it and interacting with it, and you're clicking and you're seeing how it feels to digest your information in a different way, not from someone standing next to you at a cocktail party telling you about the business, but you're interacting it, right, in this different way. Then you can build your homepage, because then you understand the structure and you have a better feeling for your website. And guess what? When you do your homepage last, is super easy to do, because all you do is make a list of your to-dos that you want people to do on your website. You write them down. Maybe you have 3, maybe you have 10, maybe you have 20, whatever they are. You write down your to-dos, you put them in order of importance, and you make a row for each of those to-dos, and you design the row. You got them where they need to go. So that's a big one, is doing the homepage first. And if you've tried to build a website and you built the homepage first and you felt like you failed, that might be why. So it's not you, it's your process, because you didn't know the process, right? And then another thing that I think people do if they try to build their own website is they go and they start with design first. Now, in our course, we don't even talk about design until like we're 2/3 of the way through the course. Okay, like we don't even talk about it. But like, if you like, most people go on and be like, oh, I want my website to look like this. I want it to look like this, because that is so those companies that have templates already built, right? Those templates, they're selling to us. And so our pain point is we want something that's beautiful and looks great and represents us. So so they're selling to us, right? Our pain point is something beautiful, and they talk to it. They talk right to it. And so we're like, oh, yes, they're talking my pain point. I want something beautiful. I want it. And so I'm going to buy this one because it's so beautiful. And then when you go to put your material in there, you realize, okay, their pictures were beautiful. Mine suck. Mine are terrible. Or you try to put your content in there into like some kind of module, and it doesn't fit in there because you're trying to shove a round peg into it. Or is it a square peg into a round hole? That's what we say, right? Like, so the process, so they're selling to us, they're getting us to buy the template or the theme, but we need to step back and start and look backwards. And we need to not worry about design so much. We need to get our content ready and our assets ready, and we need to get them made so they can talk to pain points of our customers, and they're optimized all different ways. So they're readable, and so they load fast and all that other stuff. And then once you've got all your stuff, it's kind of like painting a house, right? You don't see the house done first. You decide what color you do decide what color. That is one thing, which is but you can decide your colors for your website first, right? So you decide what colors you're going to use on your website, on your walls. And then you go down to the paint store, wherever it is, and you buy your paint, what finish you're going to use. You're going to need some rollers. You're going to need, as if it's oil-based paint, you're going to need a cleanup. You're going to need, the tape. You're going to need, you need a lot of stuff, right? So you get the stuff first. You get it all first, and you lay it all out. And then you take your furniture out of the room, or you cover it. You don't start painting while your furniture there. And if you do, then you probably have spots all over your furniture, and you realize that didn't come out so well. It's the same thing. Get all your stuff ready. And then when you're all ready to paint the room, right? It's so easy. It's so easy once you have everything there. Okay? So make it easy for yourself.
Yeah, I love so much about that overview that you just gave us, particularly because you gave us a framework. You were just like, hey, this is the first step, is to put all the pieces out there. It's kind of like trying to solve a puzzle without first getting all of the puzzle pieces. You're kind of wondering, I hope this piece is going to fit in at some point in the future, but not knowing it. So I love that overview. And the thing that really stands out for me as someone who, for a living, I talk about entrepreneurship, I talk about business. And Jennifer, the equivalent in my sphere is that anytime we talk about business, I always tell people, hey, if your product or service sucks, then your marketing is not going to save you. But the thing is, everyone wants to talk about marketing because that's the sexy part of business. And what I just heard from you is, yeah, the content is the important part of websites, but everybody wants to focus on the design because that's the sexy part. And so it's cool hearing that, because often it's a diversion. I always say it's just like magic, where in magic, you think this is what's really happening, but the real magic is what's underneath. In this case, talking about websites, websites, it is that content, it is that messaging, it is that positioning, speaking to what customers are wondering, which takes me to maybe it's the biggest thing we need to talk about, which is that messaging. And I'm going to call out. So your website, totocoaching.com, it's linked down below. We'll obviously talk about it at the end of this episode today. But as I scroll down your website, it's almost as if you tell a story. And for me, if I'm a frustrated business owner who has no idea what I'm doing with my website, this takes me on a journey. And it's clear you're talking about user journeys, is going from, you start with stop wasting time watching random videos online about how to try to build a website. And then you speak to my actual journey. Talk to us about how to come up with that messaging. Because I know a lot of business owners, it comes naturally to you having gotten so many reps along the years, but a lot of business owners will say, I'm a social media agency, or I'm a life coach. I don't have a story. I don't have a message. How do you even find those building blocks of the messaging?
Oh my gosh, that is such a great question. And so there's different ways to do it. We have 2 courses. So in our full course, we create buyer personas with you. We walk through that process of creating a buyer persona. And then in our fast track program and our regular program, we develop this table. It's so awesome. We have you indicate all your customers' pain points. Then we talk about the benefit of your solution with the benefit they get, and then the features of your solution or your product, I should say, either one, and how it addresses that. So putting this down in writing is amazing. And I have to say, like, I did my buyer personas for Tech Care, my web development agency, years ago, probably in 2015. And boy, did that change how I viewed everything. Like, if you're an entrepreneur listening to this lesson and you have never created a buyer persona, do it. Either take my course, which is great, or go out and find a template and go through this exercise. And if you can find some videos talking about it, that's great. It makes you understand your customer in a different way. And I can give you like a really good example from my buyer personas, and I'd love to give you an example of what I go over actually in the course. So one of my clients I really loved, I did one, I called her, you give it a fun name too, Supercharged Suzanne. I gave her that name, you give her at the end. And I was basing it off of one of my customers that I loved working with. And it was a woman. It was about my age, and she worked for, a medium-sized business. Well, actually, at the time, they probably only had 50 employees, about that. And but they were doing some very high-level work and everything. And so I was doing a bunch of websites for her and some marketing materials and stuff. And so, what am I? I'm doing marketing materials and websites, right? No, that's not what I was doing for her. After I did the buyer persona on her, I realized my job is to make her look like a rock star. That is why she hired me, because she had to go and sit in meetings, conference rooms with the boss and the CEO of this company, and they wanted to know results. They wanted to know how their website was doing, or how their printed materials were doing, or whatever. And so my job was to be her augmented arm. My job was to lift her up. And if I lifted her up and she looked like a rock star to her boss, then I was doing a good job. So I realized that's why she was hiring me. That's why. So it changed my mindset of how I interacted with other leads that were coming to me, right? I can recognize why they're coming to me. That's just one example. I did like 5 buyer personas, and you should too. You should do your worst customers, the people you don't want and you're wasting time with. I did that as well, because then I was able to recognize them instantly. Okay, I know at this call I'm getting, nope, this is not, I don't want this. And don't waste your time, because we all know our time is very limited when you're running your own business. There's too many things to do. And so we don't want to waste our time with those people. So I did those for me, how it helped me. And in my course, when I was had my web development agency, so I had a client that came to me, and they install organic gardens in people's backyards. And when I first met with the people, they were like, "Oh, Jennifer, you should see our crunchy bell peppers. They're so crispy and juicy, and our tomatoes are so red and beautiful." I'm like, "Oh gosh, that's so great. We got to put all these pictures of like beautiful vegetables on their homepage, right? Like, this is like really great." So then we did their buyer persona. We would work with them to do it, right? And I realized, okay, these people who are buying them, they're wealthy women who have beautiful big backyards. The base garden started at $10,000. Okay. So these weren't people who are just putting a garden in the backyard further, because with $10,000, you can go to Whole Foods and buy all the organic vegetables that you want. Right. So it was a woman, usually was their customer. And she loved that her kids were out in the yard and she could take pictures of them. They were on screen time. They were understood where their food was coming from. She spent a lot of time when we went through her day. It's really good to go through your day of your customer. Where does she spend her time? Because that gives you a lot of information on why they're hiring you. She would spend her day, at the tennis courts, at the club with her friends, self-care, maybe getting a pedicure, things like that, right? And then she would pick her kids up after school and she would bring them to events. And she was talking to other moms and stuff like that at events. And then they come home and have a wonderful dinner with their juicy vegetables. But what she wanted to do was she wanted to show other people pictures of her backyard. She wants a lifestyle. She's looking for a lifestyle. She is not buying beautiful vegetables. That's part of it. But what I'm saying is, so when you do your buyer personas and when you get your messaging right, you start to realize, when you really look into it, you think and you might be right. You might be totally right. You might be surprised.
Wow, that might be one of my favorite real life examples I've ever heard of the importance of a buyer persona, and even more so than just a buyer persona that we plan for, but a real life actual customer that we get inside their head. Because you're right, I'm thinking if I was the marketer behind that garden company, for example, I think if someone's interested in gardening, we got to brag about the size of our tomatoes, the size of the peppers that we're coming up with. But you're right. We're selling the aesthetics. We're selling the fact that she wants to have a garden that is Pinterest level of social media content that will make all of her neighbors jealous. And it's fascinating because you're right. That creates two different brand messages. That creates two entirely different marketing approaches, as well as it gives us a heck of a lot of clarity as to what our marketing channels and avenues even need to be. Now we need to be on Pinterest. We need to be appealing towards the social media, the aesthetic side of it, rather than, advertising in a gardening subreddit, which those are total gardening nerds. So Jennifer, I love that real life example. And I also want to call out for listeners, over 600 episodes. We've had a lot of guests talk about the importance of a buyer persona, but never a guest who came on and talked about a negative buyer persona. Who are the types of people you don't want to work with? So I absolutely love those insights, Jennifer. That's super helpful. Gosh, we could definitely talk about this stuff all day. And I told you before we hit record how much time would fly by. I don't want to let you go just yet. I do want to squeeze in something else because I know it's something that you're super passionate about. You and I share a love for technology, and that is, we're talking about a lot of work that us as business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs need to do when it comes to our website, but there are tools that at least can assist us. You talk about having a saw and then learning how to use it. That makes your life easier. And for us, one of the tools that we get to use now is AI. Jennifer, you're kind of at the cutting edge of how we can use AI when it comes to websites and all this other work we're doing. Talk about how you're starting to see AI assist our efforts in these domains.
Oh my gosh, there's so much going on. It's so fascinating. It literally feels like some days I can't even keep up. So, there's two things. There's one are the tools that are coming out that are really helping us. And the other that I do want to touch on because it pertains to websites is using something like ChatGPT that we've all heard about, right? To write your website content. So first of all, the tools. There are amazing tools that we can use right now that can speed up our effectiveness in our business, all different types of things. For example, if you have a Zoom meeting with somebody, you can install something like Otter or Read or Chorus, and it will record your entire the entire interview or the entire meeting that you're having with somebody. So say you're meeting with clients, right? It will record everything. And then what it will do is afterwards, it will give you the highlights and the key takeaways. Like literally, it will say what this person talked about, what that person talked about. And then it gives you the key takeaways and it says when your next meeting is, if you planned it. It's like amazing. So that note-taking part of we have to do that and after our meetings and then send that over to a customer is like totally done for us. So like there are tools like that are awesome. Tons and tons and tons are coming out more and more. I believe that eventually at some point we won't be using as many applications as we use right now. My guess is at some point everything's going to be tied up kind of like Zapier is. Like you're going to just talk to some kind of thing, sort of a chat bot, something like ChatGPT, and you'll be like, do we have this person in our database? No, we don't. Okay, can you please add them? Here's all their information. Like you're literally going to talk it to them. It'll probably dictate it speech to text. And then you'll say, put them in our spreadsheet. Please add them to our email marketing campaign. Put them in the following list. Tag them with this. Send out a welcome email. Put a reminder in my calendar for next week and blah, 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 blah. And literally, that's all you're going to do. You're not going to open up your Excel. You're not going to open up your Word document. You're not going to open up all these things. I do believe that that's where we're going to go. You're going to have one application that's going to be tied into everything, and it's going to do all of this quickly and easily for us. So those are the tools. The other piece that I want to talk about was I mentioned, I would say, was using ChatGPT to write your content. And so there are ways that you can do this very effectively, although there are some caveats. Number one, well, Google has come out and stated that it's okay if you have AI generated content on your website. They're going to be okay with that. That was, a concern for a while, but they have stated that that's okay. And as long as they continue to state that, that's great. This is the issue with only using ChatGPT content, right? To research something, like if you want to write a blog post, like the best 10 website builders to use and why, right? What's happening is search engines. So you got to think about the minds of a search engine. And one of the things we go over in our course is one of the classes is the search engine mindset. You need to think like search engines. So what is their job? Their job is to return the best websites possible to people searching. Because remember, I don't know how old you are listening to this, but if you're old like I am and you went on websites years ago, sometimes you would search for something and you come to these websites with just like columns and columns of links and links and links, right? That is not helpful. That was black hat SEO. But anyways, that was not helpful. So you would go to one of those and be like, oh, this is awful. You get off. And imagine if you kept going to every website and you got the same information that was being regurgitated, because ChatGPT and these other things, they're aggregating all this information, right? They're not coming up with new information right now. They're not, you can have it write a story, but if you're writing an article about how to do something or the top 10 web builders, they're not going to come up with some new experience because it is not a person and does not have experiences. So they're going to give you the same information that everyone else has. And if everyone else has this information and people view your website, right? And they go, oh, I already read this. And they click off. And then they go to another, I already read this. It's the same thing, right? If it's the same thing, people won't use that search engine anymore. They're going to use a different one. So it is in Google's best interest and Bing's best, all these companies' best interest, right, to return unique and helpful content. Google has an update out. It's called the Helpful Content Update, HCU. Google has that. You need to provide extra information. So you can use like ChatGPT as a base, but you need to add in your experiences. You need to add in what's next. You need to add in another level. It is like I said, the helpful content, and you also need to show your authority. We talk about this in our course as well. At the time when I filmed it just a couple months ago, it was EAT. Now it's EEAT, but you need to show your expertise, your experience, your authoritativeness, and your trustworthiness. And how does ChatGPT do that? It can't. It can't do that, but you can. You know what you're doing with your business. You are a business owner and you're really good at it. And you have these stories like I've been telling you, right, about my customers. So when you interject that, and if you use the ChatGPT as a base, and then you interject your own personal experiences, your own personal advice, now you're talking. So that is a great way to use these tools.
Boom. That right there is an incredible overview of everything that's possible by using AI tools. But most importantly, that's everything that's possible for us to stand out in an AI content world. Because Jennifer, you're right. More and more, we're seeing the same types of content pop up. It's funny. A lot of people thought that this was the death of the industry. And you and I have been in the game long enough to know how many of these fads have existed. Oh, email marketing is dead. Oh, social media is dead. Oh, paid ads are dead. We've heard all of these things, but but hidden beneath each of these things dying is a huge opportunity area. And I love the fact that you actually talk about the two working in conjunction. You're not talking about don't use AI or exclusively use AI. You're saying, let's take the best of both worlds, and that's going to rapidly propel you. So the fact that you also, Jennifer, one thing I will say as an aside that I really respect about the way that you do business is I don't know many course creators who typically they create a course and then it's just stagnant and it's up there and, it loses relevance and pertinence over time. But you are always in there because you freaking love this stuff. Like you are building new modules and teaching more people. So there's so much that we could talk about. I told you that I knew that we were going to go over today, and that's perfectly okay because I know listeners are loving this. But it also is a natural segue into opening the door for you to tell listeners, as we're here at the end of the episode, where they can go to learn more about you, Toto Coaching, all this awesome stuff that you're doing to help entrepreneurs.
Oh, well, thank you. That's so awesome, Brad. TotoCoaching.com is the URL. And there is there's some like lesson trailers you can watch on the homepage a little bit. I have a video that just talks about, my journey and what an overview of the course is a little long. But you can also, there's a free trial you can sign up for. I don't have a lot of blog posts because I've been so busy developing this course. Literally, it's a regurgitation. I've been pouring my soul into this. It's taken a year. It's like amazing. Of all my years since 1994 when I learned HTML, I've been pouring this into the course. But I will be having more. I'm at the end of that now, so you'll see more content from me on social media. I try to post little tips as well. I do a lot of like I said, score presentations. So I have webinars. You can also watch past ones on my website. And there is going to be we're going to put one of our lessons for free just right on the homepage that you can watch, just so you can see, you don't want to spend money on a class and not like the course instructor or feel the material isn't meeting you where you need to be met. So that's what we want to try to show you is like, we're not boring. So Josh is my colleague, and he does some of the classes as well. And he's awesome. He's like one of the best human beings walking the face of this earth. He's a wonderful person, and he's really smart. And so you can see him, and then you can see me. So you see that we aren't, super like technical way up here over your head. We try to talk to you because I know what people have asked, just like you, from working with you all these years. I know the questions you have. There's no question that's too stupid. A lot of people might feel that way. So I try to answer them in an informational way so you understand it, and I'm not condescending. And I'm not too, down low, but I'm not too up high. I try to meet you right in the middle. So you can go to Toto Coaching and see if you like their style. You can take the free trial. You can sign up. We have 2 programs, like I said, Fast Track for people who just got to get it done. It's 15 lessons plus a bonus lesson. If you don't want to learn everything, if you're a marketing manager, like the one I was telling you about my client before, and you really need to understand because you need to answer questions in the boardroom, our full class is awesome. It teaches you everything in depth so you get it, you understand what you're doing from a conceptual level, so you know that your efforts are not being wasted, and you do the right thing so that you can look like a rock star to your boss.
Heck yes, listeners, you just got so many knowledge bombs directly from Jennifer herself. I always say that success leaves clues. Look at how good she is about understanding our journeys. Us as entrepreneurs, she understands it affects the way that she even structures her courses. The Fast Track course, all of this stuff is thought about because she understands the people that she serves. So definitely go check out. And I just want to also add is that you're not kidding when you say that you have so much awesome helpful content out there. For example, for listeners who are thinking, gosh, where do I even start with this stuff? Jennifer has a full webinar for free that she did for SCORE called Does Your Website Pass the 5-Second Test? So that is just out there in the interwebs for people to learn from. So I absolutely love your commitment to giving back. So I'm going to say the link again. It's totocoaching.com. That's TOTO coaching.com. Listeners, you of course know wherever it is that you're tuning into today's episode, look below this episode and you'll find all these links and so much more that we talked about here today. So Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us today on the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been awfully fun.